The information contained in the SSI Spotlight series is designed for and intended for use by the NCAA membership. The webinar content represents the views and opinions of the participants and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the NCAA. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The NCAA does not make any representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy of the content, nor is the content intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The webinar is intended for personal viewing only and may not be recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SSI Spotlight on the state of the collegiate athletic training workforce. I am Dr. Dina Casiro, NCAA Chief Medical Officer and Senior Vice President, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this important discussion. Athletic trainers play a crucial role in the health, safety, and performance of student athletes on campus. They are often the first responders to athletic emergencies and traumas, providing immediate care and treatment for injuries and illnesses. Beyond their clinical expertise, athletic trainers have become frontline providers for mental health issues, offering support and guidance to student athletes in need. Their contributions extend far beyond the playing field, as they also serve as designated athletics healthcare administrators in more than 60% of member schools. These AHCAs are central to on-campus athletic healthcare administration and policy, acting as the primary conduit between the NCAA National Office and campus athletic healthcare providers. Today, we will delve into the status of the athletic training workforce, examining the factors contributing to its volatility and exploring strategies for improvement. We will clarify common misconceptions and highlight the essential role that athletic trainers play in ensuring the well-being of our student athletes. As the Committee on Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspect of Sport has recognized in the Statement on Workforce Issues in Collegiate Athletic Training, athletic trainers have a significant impact on the student-athlete experience, perhaps second only to coaches. In addition to their clinical responsibilities, athletic trainers are essential to the administration and delivery of athletic health care. However, the volatility in the athletic training workforce poses challenges to the continuity of these services. Throughout this session, we will engage in meaningful conversation about the challenges and opportunities facing the athletic training profession. We will hear from experts in the field from all three divisions, share insights, and discuss actionable steps to support and strengthen the athletic training workforce. We are excited to have you all with us today, so let's get started on this vital conversation to ensure the health and success of our student athletes. I would now like to welcome our guests for today's discussion. Thank you so much for being with us today. I welcome each of you to tell us a little bit more about yourselves, including your role and relevant experience as it pertains to today's topic. Tina, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tina Tubbs. I'm the Associate Athletic Director of Student Athlete Health, Wellness, and Performance at Sacramento State University. I've been working in Division I sports medicine for a little over 25 years, both in the Power 5 as well as in the FCS level. I've been a director of sports medicine for the past 15 years, still being an athletic trainer, helping the staff out, seeing what's going on with the staff, hiring athletic trainers. So I feel like I have a big pulse on this. I've also been athletics healthcare administrator this whole time that an athletics healthcare administrator is rolled out with the NCAA. So very cool topic to be discussing. It is volatile, I agree, but we have a lot of things to discuss today.
Thank you, Tina.
Absolutely.
Stevie, you're next.
Thank you. It's great to be here and chatting with some folks talking about athletic training. It's my first love. It's the way I got into college athletics. But my current role is as the Associate Vice President of Student Wellness and the Theodore Catula Director of Athletics and Recreational Sports at DePauw University. We're a Division III institution about an hour west of Indianapolis. I've got about 625 student athletes on our campus right now, and I got my start here. And so this idea of, I love athletic training, but it wasn't something that frankly was sustainable for me. And so many of the conversations I think we're going to have today are going to be connected to probably the same reasons 25 years ago I would have told you that I was starting to move out. And I guess I would challenge everyone that if we're still having the same conversations 25 years later, it's time for us to take action and do something. So I'm excited to be back in this space. I spent 4 years on the Committee for Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sport and got to know that group really well and stay engaged with SSI whenever they ask.
Great, Stevie. Thank you so much. So excited to have you with us today. And Steve, you're up.
Thanks for being here, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Steve Murray. I'm the commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, Division II, with 17 member institutions located primarily in Pennsylvania. I've been in this conference office for 27 years as commissioner and an extra 4 in the office. I'm coming off a 2018 to 2020 term on community safeguards and medical aspects. And actually, similarly, started in intercollegiate athletics back in the early 80s as an athletic trainer in Louisiana before certification was required. So that's how I got my first job. Not saying it was a good idea, but if they're going to pay, you'll do what you need to do. So I kind of predate a little bit of a licensure and requirements in that area of the country. So it's been certainly a period of interest for me and something that we've been very involved with in our conference office throughout the 27 years I've been here.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. So excited to have you all here, each coming from a different division with different backgrounds and different roles on campuses. Really makes for a well-rounded group, and I'm really excited for the conversation. So I would like to start off by asking each of you to share your perspective of sort of the current state of the athletic training workforce in collegiate athletics. Specifically, what are you seeing on your campuses?
I think for us, the struggle is staffing and limitations, and the ability to actually fill positions is very disconcerting at our level right now in Division II. We're not hiring. I think a lot of larger Division I's are in that 10 double-figure number of athletic trainers, but most of ours are 3, 4 staff, some a little bit higher, depending on. I think we have now 5 educational programs in our conference, but so those have a little bit better situations. But I think that the ability to hire open positions is the struggle for us right now. When someone leaves and being able to figure out, we have a uniqueness in our conference that 13 of our member institutions have athletic trainers that are also faculty members. And it becomes somewhat difficult to hire FTEs as faculty members when student enrollment is dwindling. So you're adding faculty while students are dwindling. So those 13 institutions are definitely struggling with that prospect as well. So even filling positions, but even the ability to expand may be more difficult than it has been.
At Sacramento State, I would say that we are in a very unique situation. Sacramento State is under the medical model. We're under Student Health Counseling and Wellness Center. And, when I first heard that, I was like, ooh, I mean, I've 21 plus years in athletics, and I've only been at Sacramento State for 3 years now. And it was a little concerning at first because it's different. But they put together a strategic plan, which is why I came to Sacramento State. They had an evaluation done back in 2021 with the California State University President's Department, and they brought in attorneys to really take a look at Sacramento State and sports medicine. And through that, they put together a strategic plan for Sacramento State that was approved by the president of Sacramento State. When they had openings and they came recruiting me for the position, with everything put into place, that is one of the biggest reasons why I came to Sacramento State. It's not just under student health and counseling. For myself, for the entire sports medicine staff, for our head team physician, everybody is under that umbrella. But I have great communication and great relationships with the athletics department. I talk to our athletic director 3 or 4 times a day, at least. We have healthy relationships with coaches, but yet on the side of health and safety, there's a very, very strong line of having autonomy to have the medical decisions in our hands. And the coaches know if there's any questions, they come to the student health center and they talk to even my supervisor, or they talk to me. And it gives a lot of support. It gives our athletic trainers a lot of confidence in being under student health and counseling. It was something maybe 10 years ago, I would have kind of thought, what's the protocols? What's this going to be like? Student health and counseling is kind of slow. We need to expedite things. But where my position is, I actually am officed in student health and counseling. I have an office over in the athletics department as well. I'm always in the athletic training rooms. I'm always talking to staff. I'm pretty mobile, but I'm also educating student health on what sports medicine does. I'm also educating athletics on what sports medicine does. And it's a very interesting dynamic that for us at Sacramento State it's driven salaries like over 30%. It's driven an increase in number of athletic trainers because we're coming from medical experts that are like, how are you dealing with 6 athletic trainers? You guys need this amount. I feel personally like support. I don't have anyone coming to me saying like, asking about concussions, like the quarterback on our football team, like the coach isn't going to come and say to the AD, we need to get that player going. We're under student health and counseling. I do feel we have a lot of safety. We have a lot of confidence in what we're doing, support for our athletic trainers. I don't have a sport coverage that I work with. My head athletic trainer doesn't have a sport. So we're able to also bounce around and help our athletic trainers if they need to go to a wedding or go to a concert, go to a funeral. We have a lot of support, I feel like, for our athletic trainers. So in that way, we're very unique. That is not what's going on out there. And I would need probably 3 hours to talk about what's going on out there. But I know at Sacramento State, we're in a very unique situation. I'm very blessed to be leading this program. But in our conferences, it's very challenging to find athletic trainers to work in that environment and not have the funding for those teams. So many people are having trouble finding athletic trainers to cover their teams and work in that department. So.
Yeah, Tina, you bring up a great point. The medical model is something that I think a lot of folks are moving towards for a lot of different reasons, right? There's the autonomy piece, which comes up a lot. But I do think in this particular conversation, it does highlight an interesting opportunity for folks. For a long, long time, athletic trainers were always and only housed in the athletic departments. And it seemed to make a lot of sense to do that. And then there started to be a lot of conversation around maybe it actually makes more sense to have them outside of athletics, whether it's under student health, or some schools even do external hospital systems overseeing their athletic trainers. And there's unique and interesting, I think, opportunities for the athletic training workforce issue when we start to have those conversations. So Stevie, let's hear from you, and then we'll dive more into this because we've already touched on a lot of themes, I think, that will really start to get into this conversation.
Absolutely. So we have a medical model at DePauw, and I'm going to say we fell into it 10 years ago in 2015 when we decided that we were going to bring a faculty staff clinic to campus, and we were going to combine the staff for that clinic with a student healthcare clinic. And so we began working with a regional medical group. I will tell you, in the beginning, I was dragging my feet. Like, I don't want my athletic trainers to go there. Like, I want to make sure that I think at that point I still had the chip on my shoulder from my undergraduate education of saying, like, I know what we need to have in this situation. We were happy with our staff. We were happy with our physicians. But I will tell you, 10 years later, it's been great for us. Our athletic trainers report up through a team physician. They report then up through that external healthcare group that we work with. But I have a close relationship with our athletic trainers, just as Tina was describing in her staff, that we actually titled our head athletic trainer as an assistant athletics director of sports medicine, to bring them in to make sure that we could demonstrate that they had authority within our athletics department to be able to tell the coaches what to do, and there wasn't going to be a way for folks to feel like they could circumvent type of thing. We approach everything through the lens of, we want to know more. Tell me why. It's not a bad thing for folks to ask, well, why can't so-and-so do this, or why can't so-and-so do that? But it's the way in which you ask those questions. So for us, it's been it's been great in this space. I have 6 athletics trainers who are working with our teams, and we've implemented a lot of things to try and retain those 6 because it is far easier to retain them than try and hire somebody new in those spaces. And that's where I want to spend my energy, is on retaining them. But like I said in my opening, some of the things that are happening today are the things that were happening 25 years ago. And Steve, I had no idea you had started early, like pre-certification, pre-licensure kind of thing. Like, there are things that you were doing back then that we are still doing today. I've not seen an evolution in this space, perhaps the way I would have wanted to. So when you ask about where we are today, we're at an impasse. I really do think that we are in an impasse, and we need to move out of this idea of we're just contemplating change to actually moving into action. And as an institution, taking responsibility for that action and not looking out to everyone else and saying, what are you going to do for me? So this is going to be a great conversation today.
That's great. I love that. And, I do like, we're going to get into a little bit later, how athletic trainers can advocate for themselves, right? Because you're right. It really has to come from within as well as from external. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear from you all about whether or not you think that the impacts on the athletic training workforce are impacting your student athletes' experience. Are they themselves feeling this on campus?
I think yes is the answer, and I have more than anecdotal evidence of that. We are in the process of doing a conference strategic plan right now, and we've done a student athlete survey and a town hall with a group of student athlete leaders across campus. And now, while I don't participate in, I have seen the notes coming back from our external folks that are working with that, and athletic training coverage was brought up several times in both the survey as notes of, we don't have an athletic trainer for our team. It's turnovers higher. It's not consistent, to the in meeting places about, sometimes we're not traveling. It's not our athletic trainer when we're on the road, those kind of things. So I think they're noticing it. I don't know healthcare impact is occurring, but maybe it's a comfort impact more at this point. But I'm sure that is affecting our student athletes.
For us, it absolutely is impacting student athletes. And I definitely think it does, probably everywhere. When we're having this shortage of athletic trainers, currently, we're hiring for an athletic trainer who is covering that team while that athletic trainer is departed. Another athletic trainer who has a sole responsibility for a team is now having the responsibility for that team. What's that medical care look like? What's that consistency look like? What's the communication with the coach look like? Does that athletic trainer know every individual's medical history like the previous athletic trainer did? There's so many gaps that happen when we can't quickly fill an AT in that role, and we're waiting 3 months, 4 months with that position going on that long. And then on top of it, you think of what's happening to the athletic trainer that's now covering that team. Are they tired? Are they getting fatigued? Did they just come from a volleyball season and now having to cover softball because the softball athletic trainer just left? And so now they're covering like back-to-back seasons traveling. Now they're going to quit on me. You just burned them out. And the requirement is obviously student athlete health and well-being. We have to cover practice. We have to cover, competitions. Certain teams, we have to travel. And so someone's got to fill that void. And it's absolutely not just hurting the staff, it's hurting the athletes. They're not getting the care they deserve to receive.
Steve made a great comment talking about how the student athletes are noticing it different. But right now, all we know, it's rooted in comfort. We know that the relationships that our student athletes have with our athletics trainers tend to be very strong. They consider them confidants, sometimes friends in those spaces. They are not transactional relationships. They are true interpersonal relationships. And I think it's hard for those student athletes then to really be able to connect the dots and say, is my care different? Am I getting something different from them? They're noticing that perhaps they're not standing out at practice with them, because that athletics trainer now needs to be hubbed in a central location to be able to work with different folks. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that presence equates to feeling valued. And so they feel less valued in that space when that athletic trainer is not present, even though they may be responding promptly to emails, texts, and phone calls and everything else along the line for them. You know, one of the interesting things that I think we did when we rewrote the Constitution is we specifically talked about student athlete health and safety, right? And this question was a little bit about student athlete experience. We have to begin equivocating staffing, especially with athletic trainers, to the student athlete experience and to student athlete health and safety, that is an obligation of a member institution to fill that. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And frankly, we know that we're going to have to change what we have been doing in order to retain these staffs. Because like Tina said, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think about when I talk to athletic trainers, one of the reasons why they tell me they get out of it is because of the hours. They're working long hours during the week. They're working every weekend. And some people may say, oh, well, coaches are doing that too. I would challenge you that coaches have a cycle in which that time commitment is very high, and then they have the ability to control their schedule at other moments and times. Athletic trainers historically have not had that type of control. So we've got to begin seeing this as athletic training staffing is core to what we're doing, not just how many games they're playing, how many games the student athletes are playing, or how long their season is, or what bowl game that they get to go to. But the fact of the matter is that our athletic trainers, there's only so much glue and super glue and duct tape that can go around at this moment in time. And we're losing the stickiness and the effectiveness because we're not showing value to those athletic trainers.
Stevie, one of the things we've done in our league, and what are there, probably 32 Sundays in the course of the year, roughly 16 each semester. We probably only use as a conference intentionally to schedule maybe 1 or 2 Sundays a year. Now it's not because it's a religious, it's about actually support staff, not only athletic training, but our communication staff. And that's almost a constant fight through our legislative process about scheduling, but we've held true to that for probably a little better than a decade. And I think that, I think that's helped a little bit. I'm not going to say a lot, but those staffs know that we are not forcing them out there to a game. Baseball's and softball in the spring, yes, there's rainouts that occur. Everybody understands and accepts that. But we don't. We schedule our doubleheaders on Fridays and Saturdays with the hope that Sunday will be available. But I think those are things that people can do on campus that's very simple, that can help just show a little bit of sensitivity towards the time demands.
Steve, that's a great point, and it's a good segue into my next question, which is really about identifying the stakeholders, right? Who are the people that we should be talking to about this issue, right? I think athletic trainers feel it. I think athletic directors now are starting to understand, right, that this is becoming a bigger issue across the way. But can you all identify other stakeholders that you think need to be brought into this conversation so that the true sort of levity of this situation is understood across the board? Tina?
That's a great question. And I think the answer to that is the chancellors and the presidents. They are the stakeholders. They are the ones that are going to put the line item in the budget. They are the ones that are going to say, this is how we do things. Like I said, at Sac State, the strategic plan for sports medicine was approved by our president. It has to be by the president. And I feel that the NCAA has to work with the chancellors and the presidents. It's great to get all this, dialogue going of what do the athletic trainers feel, but the actual cutting of the checks and making policy is with the chancellors and the presidents, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if I build on that, the stuff we talk about in this area, it's the weeds. Like our presidents are not in this space. And I get why they don't necessarily want to be in this, but I don't actually think that many understand where we are at today as it relates to student athlete healthcare. And so what you're doing for the students you're bringing on campus, but broadly institutional risk management. That there are a number of things that when they make their top 10 list of, enterprise risks for their institution, there's always something connected to health and safety of student athletes on there. Concussion management, probably is going to remain in the top 10 forever and ever kind of thing. They need to understand the nuances at this space and start to maybe, throw their elbows around a little bit, because some of the things I think that we are asking for in a way to help retain our athletic training force. So for instance, you don't benchmark salaries against other folks who are in athletic training and college sports. Instead, you got to benchmark salaries against, frankly, the highest paid athletic trainer that's in your geographical area in order for you to be somewhat competitive. Your presidents need to say to HR, that is what we're going to do. Now, we can't do that for every position on campus, but we think that this position is so vital to our student athletes and to our institution that we are going to create this carve out an exception for them to move in that. I find that presidents understand, they're in that contemplation stage, they get it, but we really need them to use their weight to push into other folks on campus to say, make this happen for us. The other stakeholder is coaches. And I know that that sounds kind of obvious in this space, but the coaches need to understand the lens of the athletics trainer, the athletics communicator, as Steve talked about, and that they aren't going to get a break. They are going to go, in my place, everybody's got a sport during every season, which means that at some point there's going to be an inconvenient time for our athletic trainer, or I should say an inconvenient time according to the coach for the athletic trainer in order to take a break, but they need to take a break. If the coach could receive that with grace and not a sharp response, that would go a huge way in terms of that relationship between that athletic trainer and coach, because now we see each other as people, not just this transaction that, quid pro quo, we're just providing one for each other.
Yeah, the other interesting piece there, Stevie, is as we see turnover, we see vacant athletic training positions across all three divisions. We see how long it's taking to fill those positions. To Tina's earlier point, we see the stress and the strain that it puts on the athletic trainers that are left to fill those gaps. You start to think that coaches will probably start to feel the effect that it has on their team when their athletic trainer keeps leaving, right? And you've got to now onboard a new athletic trainer. A lot of times the new athletic trainer is younger and greener and less experienced than the one that you lost. And the impact that has, right, on the team. It's an opportunity for coaches to really see and feel the impact of this workforce issue, and then, utilize that to talk to their athletic director, who can then utilize that to talk to the president, right? And just kind of march it up the chain, because I think we're getting to a point where if this continues, presidents are going to turn around and say, my goodness, we should have addressed this, X number of years ago. And so I agree with you all that getting this in front of presidents and chancellors, and certainly that has been part of what I've been doing since I got here, particularly using my time in front of that group to talk about this issue. But it does have to happen locally on campuses as well in order to be truly effective.
Tina, I almost have a standing item on I meet with our presidents at least twice a year, and it's almost a standing item on mine to talk about. If it's not a standing item, it's out of my report of my concerns about reminding them about their expectations. We have a requirement that every president, AD, and healthcare administrator has to sign off on a document every August the 1st that you're meeting the concussion protocols from the NCAA, and a couple things that we add to that you're following the mental health checklist, and finally that you're practicing some sort of emergency action plan at least once a year with all of your staff, and they have to sign off on that. But so I use that as also a bully pulpit a little bit. But like I said, the availability of staffing is a little bit of the concern right now, not necessarily the demands, but are there people to actually go in those spots?
That's right. Yeah. So the next question I want to ask is about the athletic training sort of role in general. Has that evolved over time? I certainly have my opinions on the matter, but want to hear from you all as panelists. Has the athletic training role on campus evolved?
I joke with our athletic trainers. I think they have a better education than the guy that delivered me 60 years ago, and he was a doctor, so, and from Johns Hopkins. So it's what they do and have access, but now we have the mental health stuff. It's the levels of concussion and medical documentation that really insurance coverage issues that you really did not have 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I mean, it's all for the better in the long run, and maybe our litigious society, but the reality is, like probably for all of our jobs, it's not what we got into, the job for, and then that has to weigh on athletic trainers for certain.
Stevie, go ahead.
When I interview athletic trainers, and I say to them, what's your favorite part of being an athletic trainer? And they're like, oh, it's the rehab that I get to do. I learned how to do this. I learned how to do that. Everything they're telling me is one-on-one. There is no longer this idea of care and treatment in an athletic training room where you have 6 kids coming in at the same time and you're lining them up on tables and you're, putting heat packs on one and stim on another, and you might have to do ultrasound and one's going to wait. Everything is so personalized for them in that space, and I think about just, you learn to love the things that you do more. They're spending more time in their education and their professional development, learning about rehabilitation and what they were doing before. I used to tell my athletic trainers, listen, we can outsource rehab to a physical therapist, to a private clinic. We can do something so that way it frees some time up in your schedule. And they're like, oh, no. I don't want to do that. Like, I want to keep doing the therapy piece to it, sort of thing. So it has changed in the sense of, like, you're now playing man-to-man. You're no longer playing zone with all these students in the athletic training room. And we just frankly don't have enough people in order to be able to continue to operate that way.
Yeah, I think in the Division I landscape, that's all I can speak to. It's changed a lot. There's definitely a lot more expectation. There's, like Stevie mentioned, one-on-one care. There's more expectation on prevention. There's more expectation on rehabilitation, on treatments and how we're doing treatments, on sports science and how we're using statistics in our baseline testing, how we're doing recovery. When we have a Sunday off, is that going to be a Sunday recovery treatment for the team? And the athletic trainer has to come in and do all this recovery for the team. I mean, on top of just the medical side and, getting referrals to MRIs and expediting a lot of things medically, we also take care of weather. We are the weather people. We check for lightning. We call a game if there's lightning. We call a game if the wet bulb is too high. Coaches really love us in those moments. Here in California, we have wildfire smoke. Love it when the smoke gets too high and now you're working with your athletic director and your coaches trying to negotiate, wait, it's 201, can we play the game? Well, the policy is 200, that's the cutoff. That COVID, I mean, that brings up a whole nother thing that we don't need to go back down into, but it's just so much liability, so much responsibility. It is not just healthcare, even mental health care, it's all incumbent healthcare. It's all the other things. And I think, like we've all just mentioned, without the support from high up, I believe, like NCAA presidents, chancellors, of really making sure there's the right number of athletic trainers covering those teams that can get some rest on that Sunday, maybe when they just fly back in, that they can have a day off to take care of themselves. And also to just make sure there's enough athletic trainers and student athletes are being taken care of well. I think there's definitely a big gap, and what we're doing is we're doing such great work as athletic trainers, and there's not a lot of value on what the athletic trainers are getting out of it. And so they want to have hobbies, they want to date, they want to have kids, they want to do things, and the expectations are just, it's workaholic pretty much, and
You bring up a good point, Tina, about remembering that athletic trainers are human beings. I feel like for a really long time, and I was an athletic trainer, so I can speak to this, personally. You're you're in a line of service. You're there to help. You're there to treat the athletes. You're very rarely putting yourself first. And I think that has sort of, kind of come full circle. And now we're at a point where athletic trainers are oftentimes not looked at as people that have a say in, what happens with the practice time today, or what happens if I had to pick up my children from school, or had a party to go to this weekend for my family, and now practice has changed, and now all of that is supposed to go out the window. So I do think bringing up that human component is important, and remembering that athletic trainers, really do need to be treated the same way as anybody else on the decision-making team in terms of what's happening. And then the other two pieces I'll bring up without trying to put gasoline on the fire is NIL and the transfer portal, and all of the new complexities that these particular areas have brought for athletic trainers. I hear a lot from folks about, I've got kids showing up now for official visits all year round, and transfers coming in, and then I'm having to catch up on all their medical information because I didn't know any of this before they got here. And so there's lots of, I think, pieces to this sort of contemporary college athletic landscape that really adds sort of more fuel to the fire. And I know will be continued areas of conversation as we try to pick through this very complicated issue. So would love your opinion on if college athletic trainers are leaving this setting, where are they going? Where are some of the other places that you all are losing athletic trainers to?
There used to be this like bright and shiny thing that you were a college athletic trainer, and it came along with this like, I am so cool, right? I get to go here, and I get to travel, and I get to go to a bowl game, and all of this other kind of stuff. And it was, high school was okay, but high school was college and then high school. And now it's reversed. Athletic trainers, when they leave the collegiate setting, they can go into spaces that are telling them you are only working 40 hours per week. You are not going to have to work weekends, type of thing. You aren't going to have to deal with some of these complexities of, I used to think that it would have been really hard to be an athletic trainer in a high school because I was like, I'm going to have to work with parents because the student can't make up their mind or they don't know what they're doing. And now we've got college kids that it's kind of the same thing. They don't really know what's happening. They've got to call mom or dad to figure it out, but mom and dad legally aren't able to be in that circle until the kid really says officially, I'm going to be there, sort of thing. So in our place, at least, and I'm in rural Indiana, they're going into high schools. Do I have a couple of big factories around in town? Yep. And so one or two are flying out there, but for the most part, they're just saying, I'm done with you. Like, college, you're not moving fast enough. You're not making enough change for me, and I can find something better.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, some hospital settings where it's more controlled and more of a buffer between the programs. I mean, what did we all hear in the last couple of years? Amazon hired a whole bunch of athletic trainers because athletic trainers are probably cheaper than nurses in those big facilities. So and probably more adept at taking care of rehabilitating and caring and strapping to be able to return to work quicker than perhaps nurses might be. So that obviously seemed to have been a bit of a drain. But the hours issue, like I was mentioning earlier, I've got faculty athletic trainers that are working 37.5 hour a week at 13 of my institutions, and it's overtime after that. And they haven't got necessarily more staff, or maybe one or two here and there, but it's hopefully the tide's turning that direction, and that we're trying to look at things. But I don't know that we have still enough people. And the other thing is, if I'm going to go to get my master's, why don't I go an extra year and become a physical therapist and get my PhD? If I'm going to go that long, I might as well go the year. Now I really can make more money and control my schedule better, right? I mean, I think that was I agree with the increasing of the educational requirements, but it maybe made physical therapy an easier step to jump to for another year with more money and less time.
Yeah, more stability and more structure, right? Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, I was just going to say the ones that I'm aware of that are leaving collegiate sports medicine, they're looking at industrial. A lot of them are looking at industrial. The hours, the pay, not getting the calls on the weekend, and then I'm a mentor to a lot of other athletic trainers that have left, and they're just like, Tina, the job sucks, it's not what it was, but at the same time, I have chance to go hiking. I can go, I can go do what I want to do in my life, and I don't have people calling me. I don't have coaches always on me. But the job's not that fun. It's just a job, and so it's a very interesting dynamic, because they don't want to leave. I don't feel they want to leave because they want to get out of what's going on, but they're not like, oh my gosh, I just landed the best job in my life. This is my dream. Their dream was to be an athletic trainer. All of our dreams were to be an athletic trainer. But it's very interesting, from what I've seen. A lot of them are just like, I just want to do my job, to get paid good money, and to be able to have a hobby,
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's very interesting. And another thing I think that's interesting is you look at generations, and we have a different generation coming through. And I think that is a huge highlight, that us as leaders in this field have to have those conversations with the Gen Zs, with the millennials. Like I'm Gen X, and we have this conversation with our staff a lot about, they don't care how I clawed my way to the top, how I made $17,000 a year and figured it out. They don't care. There's an expectation that they have when they get out of that MSAT program, that they need to make this amount of money, and they want to also have a life. And I think that is something critical that we have to hear of our new generation coming through, and adapt and listen and have empathy for. Not like, why didn't you do it like us? But no, you're kind of smart. You're doing it how you should do it. And we need to be the ones to change, and we need to adapt to that. And so how are we going to foster that and advocate for that? So then our staff maybe doesn't leave, but then there's hierarchical things that also need to change, that as leaders and managers, we can't change on our level.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, Tina, into the next part of the conversation, which is about solutions, right? Where do we go from here? We know there's a problem, but we also know we can't just do away with college athletic training, right? If we're going to have collegiate athletics, we need collegiate athletic trainers. And so what are we going to do to sort of get this ship back on, on track? And one of the things that I think about and want to make sure that we have time to really talk about today, and Stevie, I may turn to you for your take on the Division III Athletic Training Working Group report. This is a report that Division III put out that sort of looked at the crux of the issue and really tried to break it down into what the underlying contributing factors to this problem was. And we've been talking about it across all three divisions, because I feel very strongly that even though it was a Division III product, if it didn't say Division III on the cover, you would think it would apply to all the other divisions. And so, Stevie, I'd love to hear your sort of thoughts on it, and we'll delve into it a little more from there.
Well, it was an amazing opportunity to be figuratively sitting around the table with folks who were still practicing as an athletic trainer, to folks like me who was an athletic trainer at one point in their career and then had transitioned into athletic administration. So over the years, you, through casual conversations, start to figure out like, oh, they're an athletic director now. And then they mention something in a meeting and you figure out, oh, you were an athletic trainer too, right? Because the word always was like, well, we don't see that very often, that people move from athletic training into athletic administration. Well, tell you what, it's happening a lot. So it was great to be able to sit with them and have two presidents sitting around the table. Dr. Andrea Talatino from Augustana in Rock Island, Illinois, was chairing the group. She has a background in nursing and clinical education of nursing. So this parallel allied health medical field, so understanding the idea of rigors of moving towards a licensure, a certification type thing, she understood. And it was really good to sit around the table. And I will tell you, we all didn't agree at all times. And that was one of the things that I think made it really good when we came out, and that Eventually we came out with 3 areas. We came out with a bunch of checklists for folks basically to say, hey, what do you want to do? But one of the things that really wasn't probably as well known in this document, I would say, is the high rate of return that we had when we were surveying our athletic trainers and our athletics directors. The return rate was super high. And what we figured out is athletic directors were thinking one thing and athletic trainers were thinking something else. And if nothing else, we needed to point out to people that you are looking at this from 2 different sides of the coin, but you think you're actually looking at it from the same side. So at the very least, we need to start down and we need to start communicating with each other more.
That's huge. That is so, so, so important, Stevie. And I'll tell you, for those that are listening today, if you haven't checked out this report, please do so. You, I think, will have some talking points, not just to think about, but maybe to bring to those at your member institutions, to really start to bring awareness and make sure, as Stevie just mentioned, that folks are on the same page when we're talking about these things. Yes, compensation is important and is one of the top reasons why athletic trainers leave, but it isn't just about the money. Sometimes it's about not feeling like you're part of the decision-making process, that you don't have a say in the things that are going on. And sometimes it's just about, the recognition of the role that you play and the importance of that role. So please check out that document. I'll also take a minute to just tell the group that we are in the process of beginning conversations about convening the group of stakeholders that we did a couple of years ago to assess the athletic training workforce. And so we are in conversations about reconvening that group so we can have sort of a follow-up conversation, how things have changed over the past couple of years, really work in some of this work that Division III did with this working group, and see if we can get some more momentum on some action here. So I do want to get back to the advocacy question, because this is something that I'm thinking a lot about. How do we get athletic trainers to advocate for themselves a little bit better when they're on their campuses and they're in these situations? Does anybody have anything on that?
I think there's always power in groups in this situation. Like I mentioned, when we're in this athletic training working group, and one of the things we talked about was whether or not an athletic trainer should be able to tell a coach, no, you may not reschedule that practice, type of thing. Because what we were finding out through our surveys is that our athletic trainers were getting less than 24 hours notice before they were having to make a change. And then that was having a domino effect on their life. And they were having to often give up something because they felt that they had to make this work obligation. I think the athletic trainers would do well to gather together in a conference format like Steve is talking about, to say, like, this is what we're all agreeing to. This is the way we're going to operate. There's power in numbers in those spaces. And I would rather see the athletic trainers take a little bit more firm stand. I'm not saying that they need to care any less. Like, it's very clear. Every time I talk to an athletic trainer, like, I got into this because I care about the kids. I'm not asking them to care any less. What I'm asking is for them, to your point, care more about themselves. Understand that sitting still on a weekend is okay. You should not say, oh, I have a free weekend. I wasn't going to travel with my team. Now I'm going to. I really would like you to stay home and do something for yourself, type of thing. But you need people in my role and people who sit in Tina's role or Steve's role who are saying to them and backing them up and saying, I'm not going to take this decision out of your hands, but I'm going to counsel you, right? Remember, you got to pour into yourself before you start pouring into somebody else. So I think the group dynamics can be very effective for us in this, especially, like, to Steve's point, if we're all agreeing we're not playing on Sundays, then that's great. Then we know it's not coming out of the conference office. We can just worry about talking internally about our non-conference schedule.
That's great. Tina, how do you talk to your athletic trainers about how they can advocate for themselves?
I think that's a good question, because advocacy is important. We tell our student athletes all the time, you need to advocate. I think our athletic trainers, for me, we're always telling them to communicate timely, communicate up the chain. If I can be a resource, if I can be of support, if I can go even talk to that coach, I will. In Division I, I feel like athletic trainers have been advocating, and I feel like they're tired. That's all we've been doing. I feel like we're not sitting on our hands, like being like, okay, tell me where I need to go. It is being told to us where we're going and when we're going. And I think athletic trainers have tried. I think athletic trainers have tried to, in trying to do that, have built trust, have built like relationship, like coach, okay, I'm trying to build this relationship so then I can have a say to you about, not turning the practice schedule before 24 hours or whatever, like not changing it. But still, at least in Division I, the coaches have their priorities and have their agendas and have whatever they're going to do, and we can advocate, but at a certain time, it's tiring. And I feel right now, because we're seeing the departures of athletic trainers, that is the sign that athletic trainers are tired of advocating for themselves and need help. And yes, as managers, as leaders, we have to support them. We have to figure out ways. We have to figure out ways to build culture within our athletic training groups. We have to build leadership, build DEI training, like all the things that might nurture them. And at the end of the day, I think they're tired of advocating for themselves, and they want someone else to come in with this big cape and say, this is how it is.
That's powerful, Tina. It's powerful. And I think it's part of the messaging that needs to go to the presidents and the chancellors, right? Is that this group is tired and they've been doing this for a long time and they've been asking for more and not feeling it or seeing it. And now they're leaving. And if we don't intervene and if things don't start to change, we can't expect this situation to get any better. I do want to go back to an earlier conversation we had about retention. We're talking about successfully changing the outcome of this workforce. And I think, Stevie, you mentioned something about a lot of your energy goes into retaining, right? Because it's hard to fill the positions. And so can you talk to us? And then Steve, I'd love to hear from you as well after Stevie about some of your efforts about retention and what has worked for you in that regard.
Well, building on Tina's comment about them being tired and people not listening to them, I listen to them. And when they have ideas, it's okay, let's see how we can make this work. It's not a no. It's a, yep, let's try this and let's see if that's going to happen. So my head athletic trainer, who again, I said was a titled athletic administrator, she is bringing things to me where it's, hey, we're not going to travel as much. And here's what it's going to look like when we're not putting people on the road. Great. Tell me when you are going to put people on the road, though. So that way, if I have a coach that comes to me and says, I'm really mad that they're not coming with me, or why aren't they coming with me? I can stop it right there. I don't have to say, well, I don't know. She didn't tell me what the reason is in that space. I don't see travel as a benefit. I mean, we are getting into the space where at DePaul, for instance, our teams, we have a handful of teams that'll travel internationally every single year. And most people would be like, oh my gosh, this would be great. You get to go to Italy for 8 days. That's 8 days away from their family.
And 8 days of work.
Yeah, and it's work, and they may not be able to fight. We encourage family travel, so we're never going to say no. But our university policy doesn't allow me to pay for family members to go on travel opportunities. My people aren't on contracts; they can't negotiate it. So I have to be really cognizant to all of that. I've had 2 athletic trainers this year become parents, and with newborns, I got to tell you, it's challenging in those spaces, but what we've said is we're committed to you for the long term. So tell me what you need. So we've worked out flexible schedules. I have people driving separately. The university is paying for a rental car for them to be able to go separately so they can have some level of independence. I don't make anybody share hotel rooms if they don't want to share hotel rooms when they go on the road, sort of thing. You get your own space. We created a baby care room in our department for our people, so they know when their children are here or they need some privacy, they have some place to go and they don't have to have any kind of embarrassment about that for them. When we have tried to keep people on, I can't control their pay. I can't control their CEU monies. That's one thing that I can't do as a third party thing. But anything else, Like, you need new equipment, you tell me what it is. Like, I will get it for you. That's broken, it's getting fixed first on the list, sort of thing. Like, I'm just trying to be a good colleague to them and help them and really show them, I would say, that they are not bottom of the totem pole, that the coach's needs and the student athlete needs don't come above them. I balance all of those three things at the same time. So, knock on wood, we have 6. We'll keep 6. I think I've had 6 now for 4 years. I would like to think that we're a desirable employer for people when any one of them decide to move on in those spaces.
Great, thank you, Stevie. Steve, anything to add to that one?
I think a little bit of it. One of the things, and retention is a little tougher from a conference office standpoint. I'll tell you something that just happened to me in the last couple of weeks. We have 2 meetings annually with our athletic trainers. I of our staff liaison that work with them. So we don't have our associate or assistant or communications. I feel like, plus I can still tape an ankle, I think. So we're seeing a reduction in teams traveling with an athletic trainer, and a couple of the athletic trainers gave an example at their recent meeting of they didn't throw teams under the bus or schools under the bus, but that they felt put upon by the team traveling without their athletic trainer. So they're the host, and a coach was rude, or student athletes were rude, or showed up only with 15 minutes and they had 24 ankles to tape, right? Mm-hmm. And I immediately, I had in the past, but I hadn't this year, I sent an email then out to all of our coaches in our entire league saying, look, if you don't understand that this is a situation now, get with the program. And I'm going to consider a violation of our conference's sportsmanship policy if you are rude and I can fine you or suspend you if you're rude to a host athletic trainer because your institution did not travel with an athletic trainer. And then the other thing that I think athletic trainers have to care for each other a little bit is, like I mentioned, the 24 ankles that need to be taped on a soccer team. Do they really? Put them in braces. If we get that many need to be taped, maybe we got a problem. There's more at stake here. So how do we manage that? Don't send a list of this is exactly how I tape knees. That's stepping on people's toes, but and not show up 15 minutes before the game to say I need to have 24 ankles. I say they got to take care of themselves too. But and then it wasn't just. And I told the athletic trainers, look, from now on, you need to tell me. Don't tell me a month after it happened during soccer season. Tell me, I'll call and take care of it. Because nobody wants that. I'll tell a president, look, your coach is acting like a jerk on the road to our athletic trainers. That's not good, because could be you one of these days.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? We've got to stand up and make sure that people are being treated with respect. This is a tough time. Folks are all understaffed, trying to cover for each other. So being mindful of what you put on other people's plate and also how you handle yourself in those situations is great. So unfortunately, we are out of time. I feel like we could have went 2 more hours on this, honestly, and really dive even deeper into some of these details. I do want to give you each an opportunity, just 30 seconds, to sort of recap anything or highlight any areas today. If there's anything we didn't get to that you wanted to bring up quickly, let's go around the table and do that quickly before we end. Tina, we'll start with you.
Okay, first, thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation. It's been a great opportunity to hopefully shed some light on some areas. I think right now it's interesting because we have more ATs than ever before out there. It's not that we have a shortage of athletic trainers. We have more and more athletic trainers becoming certified, and yet we have the shortage. And as we discussed, there's so many reasons to that. And I absolutely feel our last piece that needs to come into the equation is the NCAA working with our chancellors and presidents. As managers, we can do a lot, obviously, as Stevie and Steve talked about, as far as working with their staffs. But at some point, there's another level and another layer to this, and that involves our chancellors and presidents to be very involved in how they're going to take care of and help with the situation.
Thank you, Tina. And thank you so much for being part of this today. Stevie?
For me, to all my colleagues who are sitting in this position of control and authority in your athletics department, it's time for us to realize that it's action. We have to take the action. We should not be looking into the environment and saying, these are all the reasons why we got here. It's inconsequential now. We're here. And we've got to do something. So this is the plug for the manual that came out. It doesn't look like this when you click the link online, but if you go through, it's divided up into sections related to culture and communication, workload, and compensation. It should be easy enough for your leadership team to sit around and say, what's the low-hanging fruit in here that we can tick off and take action on? And then come back in 6 months and do it again. We've done the thinking for you. We put it all down on paper. Now it's time for those that are in leadership positions to say, I am going to be responsible for taking action and being a part of the solution.
Thank you, Stevie, and thank you for your work on that group. I mean, I am just so proud of what came out of that group and so excited to continue to share it broadly across the membership. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for your work on that group. Steve, any last thoughts?
Well, no, I think maybe echo what Stevie Baker Watson said. We work together on CSMAS, and I think we're both pragmatic solution folks oriented. And I think it's time to stop complaining about, well, the education program's now gone to 6 years instead of 4. Let's stop talking about that. Let's move on. What are the pragmatic solutions that we can do to make this an appealing job? And could we, like Tina said, there are athletic trainers out there. There are more athletic trainers, but we need them at our level and our jobs. And what are the pragmatic solutions? And we have those. We just have to implement them.
Yeah, that's great, Steve. Culture has a lot to do with it, right? We've got to improve the culture of what this job looks like and what it feels like and the reality of what this job is. That's where the work really needs to be done. So thank you all so much for joining me today. And thank you to our audience for attending today's session. Don't forget, your certificates of attendance are available. You will find instructions in the chat for those. Please, as always, email any questions you have or future suggestions to ssi@ncaa.org. And remember, registration is now open for our next SSI Spotlight, and we look forward to seeing you all there.